Hey, everybody, and welcome. We want to welcome you here to our this month's YouTube premiere, where we're talking about moving from personalization to power moves, really how we take personalization into what we'll call more enhanced learning. Because when we talk about personalizing learning in traditional teaching and learning, we often imagine that we're trying to replicate one-to-one tutoring and a lot of the flexibility that goes along with that. And to a certain extent, that's true, where we want every learner to get what they need at their own pace. But in reality, that's almost impossible for us to do. Certainly, as a single instructor, as a single facilitator with a large cohort of learners, that's impossible. And so the attraction to generative AI and this type of personalization is obvious, but it's sort of become a buzzword. It's overused in AI terms. And so part of what we want to try to do today is to unpack a few practical things that we've come across in the wild, so to speak, around enhanced learning. I kind of like that term a little bit better because it really centers on things like learner curiosity and creativity. And it also appreciates the fact that an instructor-led design, meaning not instructor-led courses or workshops, but instructors who take the time to properly design a course, that can carry over into the personalization. It can actually enhance the personalization that generative AI can provide. But it can be better, it's easier, and it's easier to put into practice, and students can take advantage of it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So if we think about that as our topic, that is our the underpinnings of what we're going to go through today with some practical examples. Keep that in the back of your mind. I should probably introduce myself if this is the first time you're joining one of our premiere sessions. My name is Jim Wagstaff. I am one of the co-founders of Noodle Factory, which is an AI-enhanced teaching and learning platform. We've been around since 2018, so we've seen a lot and done a lot in terms of the use of AI well before generative AI. And you can see some of the other places that I spend my time and try to invest in largely professional development for teachers, but also in workplace learning as well. So there's my contact information. If you'd like to stay in touch after today, would love to hear from you. And if you would like to join our AI Educator Network, there is a QR code and a URL. We'll put that into the chat so that you can go and join that if you would like to keep this conversation going. This is basically just like-minded educators, birds of a feather, and we talk about things related to topics like what we're covering today, enhancement of what's happening in the classroom or in the workshop. So coming back to our topic for today, really what we're going for is this idea of enhancement or individualization at scale. So as we think about that individualized attention that's scalable so that every learner feels supported, where, by the way, we're still also saving time and we're keeping visibility and control in terms of what's going on in the learning journey. We want to share some direct examples that we've come across on our journey in generative AI over these many years, drawn from real experiences, real educators, to kind of get you to think about in your own practice what this type of enhanced learning could look like. Underscore the word could, because your mileage may vary, your situation is going to be potentially very different. But let's take a look at a couple of examples. And where possible, I'll jump over into the Noodle Factory platform and show you at least how we approach this. So let me jump over to the Noodle Factory admin panel so you can see that. What you're looking at here is the Noodle Factory admin portal. So as an instructor, this is really kind of your private teaching space. It's secure. You can brand things the way that you want in the student experience. And it really gives you the ability to align those enhanced learning experiences to your curriculum. And in that sense, if you take a look at this, so you can do things like integrate into various learning management systems, different storage locations. And at one university that we work with, each faculty member runs their own AI tutors that mirror their course. And so what they would see over here, there's a dashboard that we can jump to. You can imagine a business lecturer who's setting up an industrial economics tutor, while a nursing lecturer is building one that's focused on patient case scenarios. If you joined us last month, you remember I set up a tutor that was focused on sports nutrition. And I created an avatar called NutriSensei. So no matter what type of course that we're talking about, one of the things that allows us in our own work to provide a level of personalization is this idea that you can take existing content that you're already using and a course structure that you're already using, probably housed inside of your learning management system, and really mirror that inside of what's effectively a walled garden, a protected, safe, context-centric area where you can go ahead and build out that knowledge to really mirror what's happening in the classroom, whether that's a physical classroom, a lecture hall, a virtual classroom, a workshop, whatever that looks like. What that gives you is, in the context of personalization, something that is a familiar thread. It's a common thread. So the student, the learner, gets access to this familiar faculty-specific resource that really feels like an extension of what's happening in the classroom. And that might sound a little bit counterintuitive, because you think, well, personalization, isn't that very free form? Isn't that something that is designed to be very learner-driven, very constructivist in nature? And it certainly can be, and we'll look at an example of that. But I think the freedom that you can get with that type of an approach as a student is enhanced by a structure or a context that is informed by what's happening in the classroom. And so that's really what we're trying to do here. And the way that that would show up, so you can imagine if I go over to the learner view, the way that that would show up is I've got a starting point. So if I wanted to start down a pathway around sports nutrition or micronutrients or case studies, a role play potentially, all of this is structured in a way that feels very familiar. And this is a super simple example of this, but it feels familiar because it's very aligned with what's happening in the classroom. So I'll share another example with you that we've come across recently. Why does all of this matter? Well, instead of students waiting for, let's say, office hours, or worse, staying silent inside of a classroom, this type of structured AI enhancement gives them a safe, always available way to engage. And we have an engineering professor that we work with who talks about one of his students as an example, who rarely spoke up in class, but they typically spent hours interacting with the AI tutor. And the lecturer was able to see this because of the dashboard that we'll look at in a moment, which was able to further enhance the approaches that this instructor took. And when they compared notes, this particular instructor, they realized that the student, in looking at their progress inside of the AI tool, had gone way beyond what the course and lecture content had prescribed, because they started to explore different advanced concepts. And this was all because this quiet learner, we'll call them, was given the ability and the confidence to ask questions privately. And this really sparked her curiosity, allowed that learner to scaffold topics within the course, but all within that relatively, in a positive way, confined domain of the content. So this is a great example of where a student chose a particular way forward in their own learning journey, and they chose a path where they knew that they would find the best approaches. So they knew what they needed to learn, and they found a way that suited them the best. However, this also highlights this need for and the importance of guided pathways. So another important way that we can boost personalization is to provide some structure. So in that last example, a student who's choosing or creating their own learning pathways, that works great when there's a reasonably high level of metacognition. In other words, when we've learned how to learn. But a lot of students haven't gotten there yet, and they need structure, they need guidance. And This, again, might sound like this counterfactual when it comes to personalization, but structure and enhanced learning can really go hand to hand. So one thing to consider when you're deploying generative AI tools as a part of your class is really to be very conscious about structure when you upload your materials. Decide how to structure that journey week by week, topic by topic, or even having subtopics. Recently, in a law school that we work with, we had the chance to work with a lecturer who organizes her case studies, or organizes her AI-assisted tutorials around things like case studies. Her students gave feedback saying that it really felt like the study buddy was very aligned to the sorts of conversations and the work that was happening in the class, and it gave them the opportunity to work through the cases step by step at their own pace, individually or in groups, rather than trying to unpack and make sense of hundreds of pages of information on their own. It was exactly the same material as what was being covered in class, but in this enhanced, personalized way, the structure felt more digestible and more in the moment, paradoxically. So we think about that in terms of what the setup would look like in a platform like Noodle Factory. So if we go back over to our admin panel, so this sort of grouping of knowledge, the structure that we have here, the knowledge itself, along with something that we'll look at in a moment, the learning outcomes that we can generate directly from the content, all of this structure paradoxically supports the type of learning personalization or enhancement that students can benefit from. So another aspect of this to consider as far as this enhancement that we can bring that's empowered by generative AI, if you think of this example, when you upload that content, the system has been set up, our system anyway, has been set up to suggest learning outcomes. And many generative AI tools that are there to support the teaching side of the equation are meant to do that as well. For example, we came across a psychology course where an instructor uploaded a transcript of a lecture on cognitive bias. And within just a few minutes, the system was able to generate learning outcomes that were really tailored for that particular topic, which was a kind of a subtopic within the broader course. And one of the learning outcomes was to identify common types of cognitive bias and then to apply bias recognition to real-world decision-making. And that triggered the creation of a role play where the student could actually engage in that type of critical thinking or identification of cognitive bias. So instead of starting from scratch, something that is perfectly fine, this instructor had a ready-made framework that they could tailor and tune. If I just switch over here to the admin panel again, if I go into my knowledge base, the nutrition basics, if you were with us last month, you would remember this. So my nutrition basics module, if I wanted to add, let me go back there. If I want to add learning outcomes, actually I've already added learning outcomes. So this came directly from the documents. I'll show you how that works again. This is not a best practice because I'm going to be overwriting what I've already done, but this is from last month. So I'll go ahead and just use that document that I created last month. And there you can see I've got these recommended learning outcomes that I can either take and keep, or I can edit those, or I can just start from scratch, which is perfectly fine. But it's potentially saved me a lot of time, especially if I'm creating learning outcomes down at that subtopic level, which I might not normally do. I might have my module outcomes, my course outcomes, but I might not go down this deeply. Once I save this, what's nice is this will inform the student experience. And so now everything that the student is doing within that subtopic is going to be informed via the AI using those learning outcomes. So something that can be really useful is providing that structure again, but using automated learning outcomes. So let's take a look at another example. Let's think about this from the student's perspective. What does this type of enhanced learning look like? How does this enhanced personalization show up for the learner? Imagine, if you will, you're a first-year international student in economics. English isn't your first language. You might be struggling to keep up with the fast pace of a lecture in the classroom. But when you return to the subject, you might want to engage with that content, let's say in a different language. So I'll just switch over here and I'll switch to the learner view. As you have seen in previous sessions where we focused in on things like language learning, one of the nice things about generative AI, I'll just switch to Spanish here, is the ability to use the underlying large language model to, looks like we got a little bit of a bug there, but I can switch to the language of my choice, even though the underlying content in the case that we're looking at here remains in English. So this small shift in the learning experience is much more enhanced, and it makes, for the student anyway, it makes it feel like it was built just for them. So that might seem like a small thing, but the ability to shift to a language that I'm more comfortable in while still referencing the same underlying course materials that I'm using in class, that's huge. So something that we've referred to a couple of times is this notion of role plays or practice. This is where student engagement can really come alive, so this enhanced personalization kind of takes on a finer point, if you will. As an example, we worked with a marketing lecturer who decided to include role plays in a course where students were practicing pitching to a client. And the AI was instructed to play the role of a skeptical customer, and the students were asked to emphasize the value that they were pitching and even to adjust their pitch in real time based on the type of skepticism that they were getting from the client or the buyer. Afterwards, the AI gave personalized feedback on persuasiveness, tone, and clarity. And the students said it was great because it was close to real-world practice. And one of the students said they even used the role play to prepare for an internship interview where there was going to be a similar type of a scenario. You had to pitch or portray the value or the value proposition of your approach that you were pitching. So really interesting things that we can do there in terms of that enhanced personalization. So this type of enhancement can give students targeted confidence-building practice, things that they can't easily get in the classroom. So here again, if I switch over to the admin panel, this is something that, in fact, let's try that example. We can set up something very simple. We'll set up a role play, and we'll put this in the uncategorized topic because I'm going to use that marketing example. So let's go ahead and add this. So we'll call this our marketing skeptic. Am I spelling skeptic right? I think I am. And we'll really simply say, you are a skeptical client who is going to give a marketing, to be very critical of any marketing pitch you hear. And the learner role, you are a marketing exec trying to pitch to a skeptical client. Now that's a terrible, not a very great description of this. Oh yeah, there we go. I did spell skeptical wrong. Thank you, Grammarly. But I'm going to get some AI assistance in this, and the AI is going to help me build this out. Even with this really poorly worded description of the AI role and the learner role, you can see there that I can very quickly set that up. And in a matter of minutes, once I put in the assessment criteria, my rubric essentially, and any scoring options that I want on that, I'm up and ready to go. And that will show up similar to what we have over here as a role play. And so I can push that out in alignment with what I've got going on in the class. So that type of personalization, those practical skills, that can be really powerful as well. One of the things we specifically looked at in our session last month was this notion around feedback loops. So the ability to use information or evidence from the dashboard and things like quizzes, knowledge checks, role plays, and the scores and the feedback and the progress related to that, that can be really powerful. One university lecturer that we worked with in the UK was really struggling to pinpoint why students were having trouble with a very specific concept that for them felt like very fundamental, very basic. And this happened to be in week 3 for them. And she noticed that the students were continually struggling with this. Now, the dashboard in the generative AI tutor actually confirmed this. And the lecturer was able to specifically see the areas where students were struggling. And the combination of seeing what was happening in the classroom, observing what was being brought forward in the dashboard, the analytics that were being provided, that allowed this instructor to be proactive, to bring in a more fundamental discussion about the topic into the classroom, but then also to rework the lecture materials to address that directly. So in last month's session, we looked at this very specifically, how the use of the dashboard, this is an example of the Noodle Factory dashboard, but the use of AI-assisted learning analytics, this can be a really useful tool. You can see here some feedback on completed role plays. We've masked out student names and private information, but the ability to see exactly what the student had engaged in, the sort of feedback that they got, when and how active they were, the ability to automate reminders so that if students haven't progressed or that if they haven't engaged, then there's sort of this agentic capability that you can gently nudge students forward and keep them moving forward and making progress. So all of that sort of coupled together, this might not sound like a traditional approach to the way we think about personalization, but it's this, I think the enhancement or the aha moment that we hope that you're getting is personalization is not just throwing students into the deep end. It's really about providing guardrails, providing a structure, providing, we call it a walled garden. It's really informed by the curriculum. And it allows students to have a personalized experience, an enhanced experience, but within the guidance of your expertise, which is reflected in the way that you construct and deliver and portray the coursework or the courseware that you provide. So last thought on this, if you've hung around me at all, you know I like acronyms. And one of the things I wanted to share with you today is kind of a cheeky acronym. It's called POWER. Our topic today is about moving from personalization to power moves. So I thought kind of a play on the word power. Let me give you an acronym to remember everything that we've gone through. As we have already emphasized, this type of AI enhancement is not to replace you. It's about extending you. It's about empowering you. It's meant to ensure that while you're guiding the entire class or the entire workshop, every student can still feel like they're getting individual support, tailored practice, constructive feedback. So whether it's that shy engineering student, the international economics major, the marketing student, the law student, there's a power in this if we can get it right, if we can get the enhancement and the personalization working in our favor. So here's our acronym: POWER, pathways, options, wayfinding, evidence, and roles. Pathways, basically the pathways chosen fully by the learner or structured by the educator, or ideally a combination of both. So whatever those pathways look like, it's the ability to have a pathway that makes sense for that student. Options. This could be things like language. It could be leveling. It could be modality. As simple as keyboard, voice, avatar, video, or combinations of all of those things, whatever makes sense in the moment, or whatever we prescribe, or the combination of those options. W is for wayfinding. That can be things like Socratic checks, being able to, within the context of a conversation, have that Socratic dialogue and essentially a knowledge check that doesn't feel like or look like a knowledge check. Things like adaptive engagement, the role plays that we've talked about, and the feedback and scoring that can go on there, and those micro nudges when students begin to fall outside of their pursuit of mastery, or they fall behind, so we can micro nudge students back into the structure that we have created for them. And then there's evidence. We saw that in the dashboard. So whether that's the educator dashboard, where we're looking at things like progress, misconceptions that students might have, unanswered questions, looking for inequities that might be occurring too, where we might have students that are racing ahead and others that are falling behind. And then on the student dashboard, something that we actually didn't take a look at today, but maybe that's a topic for next month, the memory, if you will, that the platform has about student progress, goals, streaks that they get on, reflections that they have. So really being able to use that persistence of memory, sorry, I'm kind of misusing that phrase, but the memory, if you will, that the platform has about the student and the student experience and the student progress, plowing that back into the enhancement or personalization that the student receives. So if we jump back over here into the admin panel, we can see we can change the persona that our agents have. So whether that's a learning companion, learning coach, a Socratic tutor, there's so many different things that we can do in terms of personalizing or enhancing that experience by the type of roles or personas that we allow students to engage with. It could be a subject matter expert. It could be a historical figure. It could be a role play buddy. It could be a brainstorm collaborator. But however we choose to do that, this is all in the service of that enhancement, that personalization. So these power moves, pathways, options, wayfinding, evidence, and roles, hopefully that's a simple way for you to keep in mind the sort of enhancements that we have the opportunity to bring to our learners. All right, so that brings us to the end of this short YouTube premiere, where we just wanted to focus in on some ideas that we've picked up over the last several weeks and quite frankly over the last several years, but they've sort of been coming to a head over these last several weeks in work that we've been doing, and wanted to share that with you. There is my contact information if you're interested in keeping in touch, or if you have questions or thoughts about today. Would love to hear from you. There is the QR code and the URL for our educator network, and we certainly hope that you have gotten, even if it's just one thing out of today, if it is the right one thing, apply that. Let us know how it goes, and let us know if we can help you in any way. But we look forward to seeing you next month, and we'll talk about a new topic related to how we can bring more fruitful, more useful applications of generative AI into teaching and learning. Hey, thank you so much for joining us today. If you liked what you heard, if you found it useful, please make sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe so you don't miss any of the content that we publish on a weekly basis. Also, head over to our website at noodlefactory.ai. There's tons of free resources there that focus on teaching and learning with AI. Make sure to subscribe, make sure to stay involved, join our community of practice and play, which is in our Facebook group, where we talk about really practical and useful approaches to using AI in teaching and learning. Until next time, happy noodling.